St. Teresa. My name's Amy Allert. Welcome to this week's episode of The Ark. And our first reading today comes from the book of Daniel, chapter 12. In those days, I, Daniel, heard this word of the Lord. At that time there shall arise Michael, the great prince, guardian of your people. And it shall be a time unsurpassed in distress since nations began until that time. At that time your people shall escape, everyone who is found written in the book. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Some shall live forever, others shall be an everlasting horror and disgrace. But the wise shall shine brightly like the splendor of the firmament, and those who lead the many to justice shall be like the stars forever. Daniel is such a cool book. If it was a movie, it would definitely be an action movie. I mean, you've got the main star, of course, Daniel, who's like the perfect man, super smart, always does exactly the right thing, escapes from getting thrown into a den of lions, kind of like a James Bond, but like super faithful to God. And then you've got your villains, some seriously crazy kings like Nebuchadnezzar, who cannot make up his mind about who or what to worship, and he throws some epic temper tantrums. You've got three guys walking around in a blazing fire, not getting hurt. Susanna, a super strong, smart woman that defeats her attackers. And last but not least, a dragon fight. It's only 14 chapters, and it's really quite exciting. If you've never read the whole book, I recommend it. But back to our passage from this Sunday's reading. Daniel was written during one of the times of persecution of Israel, and it was written to give hope to those experiencing oppression, assuring the people of Israel that God would triumph and the present evil would eventually pass away. And it was a way to reinforce the belief that evil would be punished and good would be rewarded, even when it didn't seem that way in the moment. Now, thankfully, we have not experienced being oppressed in the same way that this original audience was, but life can get pretty hard sometimes, and we can get some curveballs thrown at us that can make it hard to see light at the end of the tunnel. An example would be an injustice, maybe being treated unfairly when you didn't do anything wrong, especially if it's from someone in a place of power. And there's many, many other examples of tough times. Our message of good news today tells us that God will prevail and deliver us from the hard times. And we just need to keep the faith and trust Him. So let's pause now and talk about this. And our second reading today comes from the letter to the Hebrews. Brothers and sisters, every priest stands daily at his ministry, offering frequently those same sacrifices that can never take away sins. But this one offered one sacrifice for sins and took his seat forever at the right hand of God. Now he waits until his enemies are made his footstool. For by one offering he has made perfect forever those who are being consecrated. Where there is forgiveness of these, there is no longer offering for sin. So Chase actually covered the theme of our second reading really well in last week's episode of The Ark, but in case you missed it, I'll summarize by repeating some of his main points. So the priests of Israel were sinful and human. They offered frequent sacrifices to God in atonement for their own sins and those of the community. And they had to do this frequently because they were not perfect and continued to sin, as humans do. But Jesus, who was sinless, perfect, fully human and divine, offered one sacrifice for sins. Because he is eternal and his sacrifice was perfect, we no longer need to offer sacrifices in that way anymore. He did it for us, once and for all. And this is what we celebrate, remember, and participate in every time we go to Mass. Mass is the best way we can join ourselves to Christ, when we receive him in Holy Eucharist. For by one offering, he has made perfect forever those who are being consecrated. So just as our priests, through the power of Jesus, consecrate the bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ, so we are consecrated by receiving him. Consecration effects an intimate transformation in our essence, making us holy. So go to Mass, receive Jesus, be holy. Finally, today our gospel is from Mark. Jesus said to his disciples, "In those days after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken, and then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the end of the earth to the end of the sky. Learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branch becomes tender and sprouts leaves, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see these things happening, know that he is near at the gates. Amen, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." So as we conclude the season of ordinary time, that's the big green part on the liturgical calendar, our readings turn apocalyptic and eschatological. Apocalypse is a Greek word that just means to uncover or reveal. Now, eschatological has to do with the end times, the final events of history, or like the ultimate destiny of humanity. And this type of literature is written to sound like an attempt to foretell the future by using symbols or visions. But really, it's not meant to be taken literally. And this is where a good Bible commentary can really help make sense of what the true message is for us in this type of literature. And if you ever want to look into getting a commentary, please reach out to Chase or myself for recommendations. So, if we aren't to take this passage literally, what is the message or the good news of this gospel reading? Some people may be uneasy with the fact that Christ himself could not pinpoint the end time, but there are probably more ways that Christ grew in his knowledge of himself than we can imagine. But focus on the point that this human factor just brings Christ closer to us and lets us really connect with him, knowing that he experienced everything that we do. He understands us. He knows how we feel. He was like us in everything except sin. And so I think the most important message that we should take away and really apply in our daily life is this. No one knows the mind of God or his plans, but we do know that we have Jesus with us who understands us, and we have all the instructions for how we are supposed to live and treat others while we're here on earth. And that's what we need to focus on. So go ahead and pause now and discuss this passage. Okay, until next time, St. Teresa, God bless you.